We're standing on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, looking straight across at the Old City, the Dome of the Rock, and the wall that surrounds the Temple Mount. Have you ever heard of the Gate of Mercy in Jerusalem, also called the Golden Gate? This is the gate that faces straight toward the Mount of Olives. What if I told you that this gate carries enormous meaning for Jews and for us as Christians? But look at it. There is no gate, only a wall. In fact, this is the eastern gate to the Temple Mount, sealed shut for almost 500 years. So who sealed it, and why? And why does a sealed gate matter so much to Jews and to us as Christians? Stay with me, and in a moment, I'll show you the significance of this place. This is not just one entrance, it's a double opening, 2 arches, and both are sealed. Historically, the structure you see is ancient, often dated to late antiquity or the early Islamic period, roughly 1,200 to 1,500 years old. But the location is older still. It was built over an earlier eastern gate from the Second Temple period. So this eastern threshold already stood here in the time of Jesus. And this is not only in stone, it is in Scripture. Ezekiel describes the glory of the Lord entering the temple through the gate that faces east. That is exactly why, in Jewish expectation, this eastern threshold is tied to the coming of the Messiah. At the end of days, the Messiah is expected to come from the Mount of Olives and pass through this gate. Over the centuries, this gate was sealed and reopened more than once, but the sealing you see now is the last one. In 1541, Ottoman Sultan Suleiman ordered it walled up. No single source settles one definitive reason. One straightforward explanation is defense and control, turning an opening in the eastern wall into solid fortification. But there is also a second explanation that puts a very different edge on the whole story. This gate was sealed to keep the Messiah from entering here. Was that really the intention? How could a sealed gate possibly stop the Messiah? And that's not all. If sealing the gate was meant to block the entrance, look at what was placed right in front of it. An entire cemetery. There are graves even directly at the foot of the gate. So why would anyone put graves exactly where this entrance should open? One practical explanation is proximity. Behind this wall is the Temple Mount, the sacred plateau where the Jewish temple once stood, and where, since the early Islamic period, you have Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, widely regarded by Muslims as the third holiest site in Islam. Many Muslims sought burial as close as possible to this sacred ground. But there is also a Jewish tradition told right here. In Jewish expectation, Elijah, a great prophet, will come before the Messiah to prepare the way. In that tradition, Elijah is treated with priestly purity rules, so graves matter. So the story goes like this. Sealing the gate blocks the entrance, and placing a cemetery in front of it blocks the approach as well, because Elijah would not cross a graveyard on his way to this gate. What's your opinion on this? Why do you think the gate was blocked and a cemetery is here? And now let's come to the Christian significance. For us as Christians, 2 lines of meaning meet here. For the first line, let's step away from the Gate of Mercy for a moment and walk to another Jerusalem tradition, the Orthodox site associated with the Nativity of Mary. This account is preserved outside the New Testament in an early writing known as the Proto-Evangelium of James. There we read of Joachim and Anna, the parents of the Virgin Mary. They are described as an older couple without children. Joachim goes away in grief to fast and pray. Anna prays as well. Then both receive the promise that they will have a child. And the moment remembered in that tradition is this.
Joachim returns to Jerusalem, and he meets Anna at a city gate. They embrace because the promise has been given.
Christian memory and Christian art later connect that meeting with this gate, the eastern gate of Jerusalem, seen here from the Temple Mount side.
So, for many Christians, this wall is not only about the Messiah, it is also tied to the story that leads to the Blessed Virgin Mary.
That is the first layer of meaning in this place. Now to the second line of meaning, the one most Christians come here for, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem.
In the Gospels, Jesus comes from the Mount of Olives area. Bethphage and Bethany are named, and he enters Jerusalem riding on a donkey. That detail is explicit in the New Testament. What the Gospels do not do is give you a street map. They do not name this gate.
Then why do we believe this is the gate of his entry? The direction explains it. Coming from the Mount of Olives, you go down into the Kidron Valley. Then you climb up toward the Temple Mount, and this eastern gate is the natural entrance on that line. That is the reason Christians connect the gospel scene to this location, through geography and Christian memory. The Mount of Olives approach, the eastern wall, the eastern gate.
And now we reach the heart of it. The donkey is not a detail. It is the sign of how the king comes. The Old Testament already gives that picture. Zechariah speaks of the king coming to Jerusalem humble, riding on a donkey. And then the New Testament shows Jesus doing exactly that.
In the ancient world, a war horse signaled conquest and power. A donkey signaled humility and peace. That is what stays with you. Centuries beforehand, Scripture described a humble king, and Jesus came exactly that way. For believers, this is not just a sealed entrance. It points to Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who came as the humble king. And it carries the promise that he will come again.
As we end, I'd love to hear from you. Had you ever heard of the Gate of Mercy? And would you come here if you were in Jerusalem? If you'd like, leave a comment below. For more Holy Land places like this, seen on location and grounded in Christian tradition, please subscribe to this channel. God bless you from the spot where our Lord entered the holy city in humility.